What's up, everybody? Welcome to House Divided here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That bad boy over there is Chad Hastings. He looks like he's in the hatch based on the background behind him, unless he's just made his old man's house like a new green screen that lines up behind him. Steve Sarkeesian, Chad, just finished up his State of the Union address. That's kind of what he called it.
Yep.
Boy, we've got a lot to unpack over the course of the next hour. So like, comment, subscribe to the page. Sorry, we're running a little bit late today, but we wanted to let Sarkeesian finish up. And I got to be completely honest, the final 15 minutes of that press conference, probably more interesting than the first 30.
Yeah, so, a little bit different than normal, but yes.
Yeah. In fact, Anwar had the last question of the press conference. And I thought it was the most fascinating it wasn't really even a back and forth. It was a question. He gave an answer that quite honestly, exhausted me. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we'll get into. I guess, look, let's start with the spring game, because I don't feel like we have to talk about that a lot. For those that missed it, Sarkeesian did meet in front of the Austin media today. It wasn't on the Longhorn Network. It wasn't live streamed anywhere. We listened to it on Anwar's phone on Zoom. So we were able to hear everything that took place, but it was a little bit of an unusual situation. So hopefully we're able to give you guys some insight. I doubt most of you have seen any of the updates. He addressed the Texas spring game, Chad, and I guess at the end of the day, he could have said, because I didn't want to, which is kind of what he said. But the official reasoning wasn't tampering or the portal window or seemingly anything that's been suggested around the nation for why other spring games have been canceled. He just simply said, we got a bunch of new guys, and we think it's in the best interest of the 23. I don't even remember how many guys he said showed up, 27. So between the transfers and the freshmen, it's a lot of guys. And he basically blamed it on the media at one point, where he was like, you guys will write negative things if a guy drops a couple of passes in the spring game. And I just thought, well, I literally can't remember an example of what he's talking about. But regardless, there's no spring game. What were you? And I don't really care. I find myself not caring about the spring game very much, if I'm being completely honest.
It's all about why, right? I think what we had figured out, or what we thought he was going to say, we didn't think he would talk about poaching because of the reporting that
right,
Anwar and OB had, and you guys had heard. But then what we thought he would say was new schedule. In a way, it's what Anwar got to at the end of the press conference, that I thought he would go into new schedule, the way things lay out now, how far we advanced in the playoff. But yeah, to your point, he mentioned 27 new faces. And I get a little bit of what he's talking about. I mean, it is new. It's very different.
Again, he could have just said, we don't think it's in the best interest of those players. But then when he started to outline the reasoning for that statement, it was like, oh, come on, Sark. If that's the real reason.
Yeah, it's a little weird. But to his point, 15 years ago, you might have a handful of new guys come in. He's got 2 dozen plus coming in. And that, I guess I could see how that would change things. I just didn't think that was going to be where he would lean in on the spring game. But I agree with you. We knew it wasn't going to happen. There'll be some, fan event, and, we kind of move on. But I was a little surprised that he didn't just say, look, schedules are different. We're trying to figure it out. But, we
think it's an antiquated idea, and we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
I really am kind of okay with the idea of, we just think it's an outdated model. And so what we want to do is try something new. And that's what, and who knows? I really wasn't sure. I don't know. Is this forever? Based on kind of the reasoning that he gave us, maybe, because I don't think we're going backwards in terms of the number of new players they're going to have on campus at this time every year. So he didn't say it was forever, but the reasoning behind the answer would seem to indicate there's a real good chance that we won't have any more spring games, especially if they have a successful season coming off of a year where they don't have the spring game. And I don't think we're going to get to a point where, quite honestly, like I don't know what happens that makes them change their mind. They know that
I don't need
they're turning away a crowd. They know that, they know all the reasons why the spring game is beneficial, and it's not moving them this year. Barring them going 5-7 and everybody going, should have had the spring game. Look what happened. I think that this is the beginning of the end, and we're in a position where he's just not quite ready to say that yet.
I'm just surprised, based on one key ingredient. I'm surprised that we're not going to have some kind of a spring game with Arch. Like, that's been my point the whole time. Conduct some kind of a thing where Arch throws some passes. I would do an open practice at some point. Doesn't have to be on that Saturday, whatever. I'd do an open practice where fans could come in and watch Arch throw some footballs. I know that sounds just really simplistic, but that's where I thought we would have some kind of spring. But then as you move forward, I think you're right, Catch, because we're watching big programs not do it, and we'll see. We've discussed who is doing it and who's not. Bama, Georgia, Oklahoma, A&M, just to name 4, will do something. Ohio State's going to change it and do kind of what Texas is doing, a fan day. And then USC's doing the same thing. USC, no spring game. Florida State, no spring game. We're just going to watch that. We'll watch it slowly, I think, fade away. But I did like it was almost like a Mac Brown channeled moment of, if a young guy drops 2 balls in the spring game, you guys will say he was a bust. I enjoyed that moment from Sark today. That was nice. That was a nice that's like an old school coach way of dealing with the media. I thought that was funny.
I literally don't know what he's talking about. I don't. Like, I'm trying in my head to remember when and who that might have happened to. And but if you just wanted to say, it's kind of a pain in the ass. Like, when this is all said and done, like, the spring game sometimes provides more problems than it provides answers. And I get that. You know what I mean? Because guys will look at their reps. Guys will look at the quarterback snaps. I can remember when Malik Murphy was competing for the starting position in the backup job. And it was like, when do you get Malik on the field? How do you get people not to overreact to Arch and anything that he does?
Yeah.
I get why it's complicated. And if that was the reasoning, is that we just think it's outdated and, we just think it's in the best interest of what we're trying to do. Like, cool.
Yeah. The other thing,
know that because you guys are going to write something if somebody drops 2 passes and then they're going to want to transfer. Like, that was like, oh, come on. But, like, hey, maybe he just needed to say that. And sometimes you just got to let a guy get something off his chest if he wants to say something.
It also could be, Catch, he may just be going on the other side of the argument here. Rex says, honestly, Chad, what purpose does it serve? Just have Arch throw. Seems just like fluff. Doesn't do anything for anybody. Rex, I get that. And Catch, maybe what we're seeing here deep down, he's not going to say this. He couldn't. But deep down, is he just thinking, fellas, there's going to be a moment where Pandora's box is sitting on the table and we have to open it. If I know I have to open it on August 30th, why would I open it before that? I'm going to open it on August 30th and let it go. But having said that, Catch, we're going to see Arch throwing some passes in practice. They're going to allow, I assume, the media to film a little bit of that. But maybe that's what it's about. Maybe it's trying to protect this 2025 season because he knows it's Texas Super Circus on steroids.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think I feel like we've already spent too much time on the spring game. Like, I don't care that much.
I was amazed.
I'm ready to hit the eject button. They're not doing the spring game. The reasoning is confusing. Let's move on to some of the stuff that I thought was really interesting, which was, and I want to go to like it wasn't a set of back-to-back questions, but Brian Davis asked him early in the press conference about the idea of, are you overworked? Like, are you asking too much of yourself? This is It was in my column on Orange Bloods today. It is, if we go back to the conversations about Jim Nagy and Brandon Harris from a week ago and all of the like conversations about who is in the program, who does Texas need, what dynamics exist, what dynamics should not exist, what should they be trying to create from a dynamic standpoint. Sark answered the question originally by saying, I'm good. I'm not overwhelmed. And Brian Davis asked in the question, because I think the way the questions were asked were really important. Brian Davis specifically mentions you had recruiting, you had the portal, you had trying to be the offensive coordinator and the head coach in both the SEC championship game and the playoffs at the same time. What keeps you from getting burned out, or you know what I mean? And he answered it like he's like, oh, I'm good. And I thought, okay, I guess next year if the offense has any problems in December, January, my initial response was like, I guess this as a baked in excuse / reason, at least in advance, he's telling us, no, don't even suggest it. I got this.
Right.
And I remember kind of in real time, I was like, well, that's the most interesting answer to a question as far as I'm concerned. It's Sark telling us he's got everything under control and he doesn't feel like he's being asked to do too much.
Yeah, that's when I thought of you the most in the press conference. I thought Brian is asking Ketch's question here.
And then Anwar asked me, right? I didn't know he was even going to sneak it in. He said, and he asked in teams, because I asked him to ask a version of the Brian Davis question, but not exactly. Mm. And then he said, what do you think? This question or that question? And I told him, I said, man, I think it's your call. Cause I was like, he kind of answered the Brian Davis question was kind of that question. And I was like, I'm afraid that if you ask that question, he may I've already addressed it. And then you just wasted the question. Right.
Right.
So instead Anwar asked him, hey, in December, you had recruiting, you had the portal on. Sark later adds, and I think we'd forgotten this part, they had all of the meetings with their players to talk about whether or not they were going to go into the portal or not. It was dozens of player meetings.
Yeah, retention meetings, right?
It took an entire week, and we'd kind of forgotten, oh, yeah, that happened too. And then he was like, he says, I really would have liked to have been watching film of third down packages or the red zone. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, I would like to have been watching film of the opponent they were getting ready to play. And then he just started talking about all of the stuff that was required of him every single day in December and January. And I was exhausted when he was done.
He mentioned one specific thing, Ketch, on the other side of it, and I thought of you right away in this discussion. He basically said, I wanted to be able to be crushing on some third down film, but I had to call it was 20-something guys to talk about. I think that was the recruiting part of it. 20-something guys to talk about, are they going to sign with us or whatever it was. And that one stopped me. Of everything I heard today, that was the moment of that's what Ketch has been talking about. That's what we've been discussing. And that's what coaches were bitching about during the playoff run. Remember all that last year? The scheduling stuff, the SMU coach, and all the Lashley and all those guys that were talking about what they went through. Lane Kiffin has griped about it. There's so many guys. It was and he wasn't griping, but he explained it really clearly to where I'm with you.
He said, I loved it, but it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's how he described it.
Right.
And I will just say, moving forward, when this conversation ever pops up, and it will a lot, I'm going to point to that answer in that press conference. I need to get the audio recording of it and have it saved on my phone. That's to me, it was so, how sometimes I do this all the time too. I'll never forget. I once when we worked at the Horn, do you remember? You have to remember this. I was walking through the building once, and this lady stopped to hold the door open for me, and I was carrying a bunch of stuff, but I was like not that far away from the door, and I remember like as it was happening thinking, oh, you don't have to do this now, you're making me like rush to get to out. And as I walked through the door, she like called me out and was like, nice gentleman you are, holding the door open for me. And I was like, wait, I got my hands full, and like I didn't really say anything. But like in my head, I was like, "Why?" This was I was so taken aback.
Yeah.
Then she just kept mouthing off to me as I was walking to the elevator, and I lost it.
Yeah.
And I cursed her out, and I told her how rude she was to hold the door open for somebody who was like in need of help, and then once they walk through, to use that moment to like shank them publicly. And then I went on to Orange Bloods and told the story, thinking that everybody was going to come to my defense and be like, you're right, Ketch. That was out of line. She shouldn't have done that to you. And instead, everybody was like, your reaction was kind of out of line. And I was like, wait, my reaction? And they were like, yeah, you were out of line. And I kind of felt that way about Sarkeesian's story today. He explained to us like what was happening. But when it was over with, it was like, I don't know if that answer gave you, from an explanation standpoint, what you were looking for. I don't know that anybody that would have heard that would have thought to themselves, oh, makes perfect sense. You know what? Sark, go ahead and take some more responsibilities. Why don't you do that?
Right. Yeah, no, it's wild. Those two moments were really interesting in the presser. We're talking about this Steve Sarkeesian spring press conference, if you will. We get to some of the other things that were discussed. We did have a super chat come in. Remember, super chats always welcome. Top of the list, $9.99. Barb's 10 starting us off. What's up, Barb's? Now that coaches and players are making a lot of money, sack up and handle the criticism. That amount of Benjamins should soften a little critique. It's one practice. Manage your time better. This might be Barb's asking for a spring game. I can't tell.
I think that's what that is.
Yeah, maybe asking for some version of it. And yeah, I don't know.
I'm okay with, I made that call because I thought it was in the best interest of the program. We got a bunch of new players. Like we just didn't feel like in 2025 with more than a third of our roster not having even taken a practice with this yet. So again, I don't care because I really am of the opinion that the spring game is, look, man, I don't care about NFL preseason games either. To the point where I barely watch them now because this just doesn't really matter. Even that third game where it's like, well, the offense is going to have a couple of quarters to get like, their little practice before the preseason opener or the regular season opener. And it's like
dress rehearsal.
It's like nobody get hurt. And I was listening to him give the answers, and I thought, you know what's going to happen? In one of these spring games, and I don't know which one. It could be any of them. It could be the Aggies. It could be USC. Who else is doing them?
As far as doing them, Bama,
I just didn't want to put the bad
Georgia.
juju on A&M.
Right. Bama, Georgia, OU, and A&M are all doing a spring game as of right now.
Somebody's going to lose an important player to an injury in the spring game, and it's going to be national news, and the coach that held the spring game and suffered that injury is going to say, I did that and lost a guy, and Texas didn't do that and didn't lose any. And I feel like that's going to happen once. You just wait. Because I've seen guys get hurt in spring games before.
Yeah, the other point he brings up, Barb's 10, thank you for that $9.99. If y'all want to throw a super chat our way, it'll go to the top of the list. The other point that he brought up, Catch, in that timeline is the portal timing in the spring. If they're going to do a fan fest on the 26th. The 26th is right as that portal's closing. So what you're asking him to do, and he pointed this out today, you're asking me to put together a spring game and call however many plays. He said 100 and something plays. You're asking me to do that, which will take a little focus off of me dealing with us trying to get spring portal guys. some fans will hear that and go, do what Barb's 10 did, man. You're getting paid a lot of money. Figure it out. And some people will hear it like you, Catch, and I think start asking those additional questions of, this is why you have brought up, hey, maybe a, not Nagy for the same reason Oklahoma gets a Nagy, but a GM type or something, whatever it is. Is there a way to better deal with all the scheduling stuff that's required?
Chad, I thought one of the more interesting things behind the scenes or in the press conference today, Brandon Harris's name didn't come up.
It's true.
Not a single support system name came up today.
Yeah, new coaches were asked about. He kind of went through some of them line by line, but you're right. That job, that other than the big job discussion that we've already talked about, you're right. Specifically, his name was not mentioned.
When he talked about what I was expecting when Brian Davis first asked the question of, are you overwhelmed? What's to keep you from burning out kind of a thing. He didn't name names that like, well, the charge against Sark is that he's in control of all personnel decisions. He's in charge of portal calls and recruiting. Like, he's the guy. And I had a source this weekend say, look, when it comes to administrative stuff, like, he's not a micromanager. So, and that's probably where Brandon Davis really comes into play, where it's like, hey, when Brandon Davis gets a directive, Sark's not babysitting him. Can you hear me, Chad?
Yeah. You said Brandon Davis.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got my Brian Davis and my Brandon Harris's mixed up there. I really thought he would have taken that moment to give some love to the people behind the scenes that he trusts explicitly and help make that stretch of time that Brian Davis was asking about. I fully expected that to be the moment where, like, look, Brandon Harris is my GM, and you guys, he does so much in the portal, and like, all I have to do is lean on my guys because that's what we pay them for, to have us prepared for the moment that he didn't say any of that today.
Yeah. And Catch, to the point of this chat here, he also didn't mention the guy coming in from Georgia Tech. That's Aaron Joe, right?
Yeah.
He didn't. Could have been another opportunity for that to bring up what he's gonna be doing. But I agree with you. As soon as Davis started the question, I thought of two people, you and Brandon Harris. Brandon Harris. Brandon Harris. Now you got me questioning it. Yes, I thought of you, and then I thought of Harris immediately. So I'm like, this is it. Catch is smiling because it's his style, because Catch is thinking, okay, here we go. I can imagine you doing this. And then I thought, he is really going to lean into what Brandon Harris is, and he didn't do it. So that was a little unexpected.
When asked about how much responsibility he deals with, he didn't once mention a name. Not one name. Not one. Not his general manager's name.
Right. Not GM, not
to
the
say,
new guy.
This person is so incredibly valuable, it helps me with this other stuff. To hear him later say, sure would have liked to have been looking at third down clips in the game leading up to the game. And it was like,
yeah. And to that point, Catch, that's where, if there's a lot of people I think that would hear that and need to be kind of wondering today what that means. Maybe, I don't know if CDC is one of them, but people around him need to hear that moment and be like, I wonder if Kirby would tell me the same thing.
If I was Brandon Harris, or if I was like your director of recruiting, if I was all these people that have big titles, if I'd heard that, you're not going to say anything to your boss. But I've had meetings literally in the last couple of weeks where I've gone out of my way to give some members on Orange Bloods attaboys. And I've learned, like, people that don't get them at the same time, they hear that. Like, and I've learned, like, as a leader, literally, it's funny that we're having this conversation because it's so timely, and that, like, if I give somebody an attaboy in the meeting, I need to be cognizant of the fact that, hey, so-and-so could hear that I'm giving someone credit. If they think they've done a good job and I don't mention it, they'll notice.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting because I thought if I just felt like if somebody had asked me that question about Orange Bloods and my Orange Blood staff was listening and they said, Catch, man, this weekend you did a women's basketball game review. You did a recruiting overview of the entire weekend. You did your 10 thoughts from the weekend. Man, that's a lot of content for the owner of the site. Like, do you feel like you've got too much responsibility? Are you doing too much? If my answer hadn't been, well, did you see the Sunday pulpit? Did you see all of what Anwar did so much last week? I didn't even have to work this weekend if I didn't want to. Like, if I start mentioning like Cody did this and Jason did that, and did you see the Alex article? If I'm not mentioning my staff and my peeps and saying these people are the reasons why I'm not overworked and the reasons why I feel comfortable with where we're doing, I feel like those people would have heard that and felt something in a certain kind of way. Damn. Catch didn't even mention me at all. Like, I think that would have happened. And yeah, I think there will be people behind the scenes that will have heard that answer and I think like CDC would be an interesting. I wonder how he would right. If I was CDC and I heard that, I might just go by Sark at some point this week and go, hey man, I was listening to the press conference and are you sure you're not overworked, too taxed? I know we're paying you a lot of money and like, I want to make sure as the athletic director that I'm giving you everything that you need. Is there anything that you don't have? Because next December, I hope if we're playing Ohio State or Clemson or somebody in a quarterfinal that you have all of the time that you need to prepare for the game properly, because it kind of sounded like maybe you don't.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
You're the play caller on offense and nothing is more important than the games. It'd be a little bit like if one of my kids said they didn't have enough time to study for a test. I, at that point, would be thinking to myself, well, what do we need to change in order for you to have the time that you need to properly study for the test? Because preparation for tests, that can't be a problem. And the moment that it is, like in life, right? You have to say, oh man, I'm working too much and it's affecting my ability to pass classes. Okay, well then something has to give, because you're not going to pass your class if you don't have enough time to study, and you're telling me you don't have enough time to study. I don't know. It is nothing about today answered the questions that I had about kind of the current setup and whether or not Texas needs to do a little bit more to ensure that they're getting the best version of Steve Sarkeesian possible. And I didn't come away thinking that really Sark knows how to answer that question properly. I think his default answer is, I got this. It's what I do. I won't have it any other way. I am the 5,000-pound gorilla in the Texas football department. And I just don't know that I was completely convinced that his answer properly framed how this discussion should look and sound. I don't know. I have more questions than answers upon hearing his answer.
Yeah, we'll stay on this topic. Also throw in some other things Sark discussed in the presser today. Injuries were brought up as well. If you want to throw us a super chat, it'll go right to the top. There's a couple chats, at least one chat I thought was good. We will get to that in a second. Also, hope you guys had a great weekend, starting off another good week. Let's start thanking some of our great partners around here. I'll start with one that's close to my nasal passages specifically, and that's Sinus and Snoring Specialist. Here's a good realistic thought for you. I'm not telling you if you go to Sinus and Snoring Specialist that you're like never going to get sick again, ever. Well, that'd be silly, right? But because I went to Sinus and Snoring Specialist, when I get a little sick, it's different now. Now that my nasal passages have been properly dealt with, treated, opened up, then it's a little different. I've had just a little sniffliness. You might be able to hear it today. Just a little bit of that. But ever since 2017, when I have little bouts of that, it is so much better than it used to be. I seem to get over it quicker, but also I deal with it as it's happening. It's a little easier to deal with because I dealt with the problems that needed to be dealt with. That's what sinus and snoring specialists can do for you. Get on in there. You'll meet Dr. Slaughter in that first consultation, and he'll talk about really finding out what the ultimate issues are and fixing those issues. That's what it's all about. Check them out. 601-0303. You can text or call securely on that number. You can also go to sinussnoringent.com. Sinus and snoring specialists. Feel clear, rested, and healthy. Hope everybody is doing well. Starting March, crazy weather and allergies and all that. Daylight savings time. Hope you got the clocks all busted forward and didn't end up missing meetings or missing stuff because of that or freaking out. There was a chat I kind of liked here. Catch this one here from William. It says, I heard it, meaning the comment, I think, with Sark talking about the scheduling, thought of why, what WTF are they paying an NFL front office team if the coach can't watch film? It was a huge red flag. William, and Catch, to your comment about CDC, I just wonder, because it's the first person I thought of, and I totally agree with you. When you stick your head in that office, you have the real conversation of, dude, were you just letting off a little steam? Were you just saying something to a press conference?
Yeah.
Or do we need to talk about this? Because it could be argued that we did not beat Ohio State and advance to the championship game because of fine margins in the red zone, on the 1, on the 2. Plays just didn't work. And today Sark said, well, if you practiced it 7 times and it didn't work, maybe you should practice it 8. We just need to execute better. And I would ask him specifically, were you ready to roll on 3rd down going into Ohio State, or did you really have some like recruiting or portal stuff on your brain? If so, we need to talk about it. We need to talk about what that means and what do we do moving forward. We are freaking Texas.
They didn't break 20 points offensively in if we say game. That when the A&M game occurred at the end of the season. Well, look, the biggest games of the season were Georgia midseason, A&M, Georgia in the championship game.
Right.
And then the 3 playoff games that followed.
Yeah.
Those were the 6 biggest games of the season. In 5 of those 6 games, an offense that sent 9 players to the NFL Combine did not score 20 points in regulation. That feels unfathomable in 2025 with Steve Sarkeesian as that's not, you had 9 guys on your NFL, at the NFL Combine from the offensive side of the ball, but it's Harbaugh ball. This is Steve freaking Sarkeesian. And in retrospect, he gets like a D last year as an offensive play caller and coordinator. Like, I'm sorry. Like, as a head coach, I give him an A. But as an offensive coordinator and a play coach or a play caller, his offense in 5 of the 6 biggest games of last season didn't break the 20-point barrier. And that can't happen. That is not the bar. And he would tell you that. Yeah. If we said, Coach, if in 2025, 5 of the 6 biggest games of the season feature the offense not breaking 20 points, he would probably suggest that is a break glass moment. Like, that can't happen. And it did. And that 5 of those games occurred all during the window that we're talking about. A&M, Georgia Part 2, Arizona State, they needed the overtime to get 20 points offensively. Right. And then Ohio State. And the one game in there where they did break 20 points was the Clemson game, they had the most amount of time to prepare for. It was at home. So we were ranking the order of importance of all of the games. That might have been the weakest opponent defensively was Clemson. Like, either them or Arizona State, we were quibbling back and forth as to which of those games and which of those teams was the toughest. I don't know. Like I said, It was just curious. This is an ongoing conversation. Literally in the middle of us having this ongoing conversation, Steve Sarkeesian met with the media today and addressed like all of the stuff other than Brandon Harris's name specifically or like, hey, no, I'm shocked. And look, God damn it, Texas Longhorn football media. How do you not ask about the Jim Nagy hire and like philosophically your thoughts on that?
We didn't get the do you want one of those questions.
How did that not happen?
Right? I wanted someone to frame it to where they were essentially asking him, hey, Sark, you just got one of these things. Do you want one of those things?
Can you talk about philosophically what you guys look for in a general manager? What's important?
Yep.
No,
you're right.
We won't ask that.
It didn't happen. Now, speaking to a guy that, again, didn't get mentioned today, a couple of quick chats here. Rex throws in to my comment, says, ridiculous. CDC's not sticking his head in Sark's office, asking him about goal line plays. Again, Rex, I wasn't specific about the plays. It's the overall stuff. I get what you're saying. And yes, CDC probably has to worry about baseball game parking. Probably. Yeah. Probably. And Tom G thinks CDC needs to be worried about the next basketball coach. Okay, yes, all of that is true, which brings us, Catch, to the guy that didn't get mentioned.
CDC can't walk and chew bubble gum at the same time, apparently.
If all of that is true, then maybe we are talking about the unnamed guy. Maybe it is a good reminder for Brandon Harris, who is in contact with Steve Sarkeesian pretty regularly, to, have those discussions. Like it's always important to that, Catch, to your point about the way orangebloods.com is structured. I think it is important from time to time for, the people you work with to say to you, hey, yo, boss, you good? Do you need this? Do you need that? Are we helping you enough? Because, heavy is the head that wears the crown. So in Sark's case, he's willing to take it on, but at some point, maybe it is a Brandon Harris to say, hey, man, that comment about third downs and stuff, was that real? Do we need to be thinking about how to process that differently? We just made 2 runs to the semis. If I can take something off your plate to help us get to that next game where we've been trying to get, you let me know. And obviously, hell, this is March and we're picking it apart too much, but the little stuff is going to matter. We know that.
Well, this is the time to have these conversations. And let me give you a quote, because I think this is really interesting. This was in my column today, but it was from a source of mine. And it was specifically kind of in response to the War Room section from Thursday night that Anwar wrote that had so much detail about Brandon Harris. And I was conveying that, like, I had reached out, and we talked about some of this on Friday, that I'd had sources that reached out to me, but one really important source to let me know, like, hey, man, Brandon Harris is tireless. He never stops working. That dude puts in 18-hour days. He never stops working. He is such a valuable commodity to our program. But then there was a but. And the but was, quote, Sark is in full and complete control of every facet of that program. He doesn't get into the administrative stuff once he has delegated it, but every decision regarding personnel or players is solely him. Did you hear anything today that made you think that quote was inaccurate?
No. I think Sark backed up that comment.
And I don't think he's running away from it at all. Like, I think.
No. Yeah, he's saying, I'm the guy.
I'm the guy, and I love it. And it's a nightmare, right? It's all of these things all at once. It's a nightmare, but it's also something that he loves. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. My response to that is a total shoulder shrug. It is confusing to be in a situation where it sounds like Sark is telling us he's overwhelmed, but is telling us that he's not and that he loves it. And it's like, because the answers don't match the sentiment. And so I'm not going to overreact to it. I'm not even going to write a column about any of this. We just are literally doing a show right after it happened. It's a conversation that we've been having for basically a week. And by the way, can I break into programming with a little bit of a complaint for just a second?
Sure.
Can you tell that I've been on Hijack playing poker? Could you tell? Have I done a good job hiding it?
You've done a pretty good job, actually. Yes. I could not specifically tell that you were experiencing poker today.
I was just in a tournament. I went all in with pocket aces.
Oh, no.
I got called by a guy with ace 4.
Oh, God.
And he flopped a full house on the flop. 2 4s. Bang, bang!
He popped aces and 4s and you ended up with
he didn't flop a full house. He flopped a set, and then he caught the board paired up on the turn, and then I had aces in the board pair, and he had a full house. And
wow. You had 2 pairs and he had a full.
And then it's you know what Hijack tells you when that happens? It sends you a note that says, "You've busted out. Thanks for playing." Yes, I did bust out, Hijack. Thank you very much. Chad, you now have my complete and undivided attention.
All right, we got it. I like this one from Rex. This is almost like Tom Hanks from League of Their Own. Of course, it's overwhelming. He's the head coach at the University of Texas. If it wasn't overwhelming, everybody could do it, is probably what Rex is saying. Maybe Rex, but
When I tell you guys that I wonder if Sark is in this for the long haul, and I don't even know that consciously he knows this or feels this or think this. This is not sustainable. And if you're Chris Delaconte, your number one task is to protect your most valuable commodity. And I would argue that the most valuable commodity on campus right now is his head football coach. Steve Sarkeesian is the engine that makes that thing go. Like never mistake me saying I think Sark is overworked or failed as an offensive coordinator last year with the notion that he's not the single most important person in the world of Texas athletics. You cannot pay him enough. He is the magic elixir that's created all of this. But what he's doing right now is not sustainable for the rest of the decade. Something will give. Either Steve Sarkeesian will relent and eventually prove all of us who've said he is doing too much, they do have to find a way to lessen his load. And some of this is on Sark. He's got to give up. He's got to trust his people and trust that, and I have to do this too. Like, I get it, man. I get sometimes you think you're the only person. Look, yesterday we debuted an article on Orange Bloods that I called Everything Everywhere All at Once. It is, y'all should go check it out. As a matter of fact, it's free. I have protected it on the Orange Bloods message boards. It is an update of every single prospect that was on a visit this weekend that Texas has made an offer to and is like significantly after. And it's an update first thing Monday morning on everybody. And everybody could have, everybody on the staff was involved in that. I could have delegated that. I took that assignment on because I convinced myself, no, I know what I want it to look like. I don't want to have to explain it to everybody else. It's the first time. I'll do it. I'll do it right. People can see how I'll do it. And then maybe next time I'll delegate that. Maybe, right? I did that while I was writing a 5,000-word column called Catch's 10 Thoughts from the Weekend while I was watching the women's basketball team play so that I could do an instant analysis article, my second within like 12 hours on the Texas women's basketball team. I can't do that every weekend. You know what I didn't do this weekend? Play with my kids. You know what I didn't do on Saturday night or Friday night? Go out to the movies with my wife and kids. Saturday night, didn't go out to dinner with my kids. Yesterday, didn't do anything. That is not sustainable. But the same instinct that Steve Sarkeesian has, I have, which I'll just do it. I'll do it. I don't trust anybody more than I trust me. I want it to get done right, I'll do it myself. But I can't do that every weekend. I'm arguing that Sark can't do that process every year. And he's saying that he can. But at some point, I would give out and he will give out. And I just feel like Texas found their guy. Steve Sarkeesian's the guy. And as the school's greatest natural resource right now, protecting him, even if it's against himself. Because look, it's not an issue today. So this is an easy one to just kick down the street. This is a December and January problem, and everybody said it. CDC's got to hire a new basketball coach. They got to fix the baseball parking. They got a big fan event coming up to replace the spring. They got things that are going on. And this will be a thing that probably just gets put on the back burner. Like, oh, yeah, I need to be mindful of that. But in reality, I think everything will go on as is currently slated. And what I'm telling you guys is that these are warning signs. And if you're Texas, you don't want to wait until it's something more than a warning sign that pops up. Trust me, I'm a Liverpool soccer fan. We lost Jurgen Klopp because he burned out. But he wouldn't have said that he burned out 5 months before he announced that he was burned out. That's the way these guys operate. They go until they break. And then when they break, they break. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that Steve Sarkeesian is just so valuable that they've got to work with him to make all of these processes easier. And if that means that they've got to make a hire that's so good that Steve Sarkeesian can trust that person's doing the thing that I think only I can do if I'm Sark, then you got to figure out who that is. Sark, what do you need so that when we get into December and January, you can spend as much time on game plans the week of a game as possible? Let's start there. What could you have had in December that would have helped you in preparations against Georgia the second time, Clemson, Arizona State, Ohio State? Those 4 games. Work with me here. Just tell me, what one thing could we have had in place? And explain it to me like I'm 5. What could we have had in place that we didn't, that I will allow me to next year not hear you say ever again in a press conference that the week of a big game, you would have liked to have been able to focus on third downs a little bit more? Because we were 2 of 12 on third downs in that game. And you know what? I don't like that. Like I don't want any of my coaches to feel like they're never able to 100% focus on the games. You know what? Because I was listening to Catch on House Divided back in March, and he made a real good point. What would Bill Belichick say the week of the AFC Championship game if somebody within the Patriots organization had come up to him and said, hey, I know you're dealing with Peyton Manning or Ben Roethlisberger this week, but can you watch film of Drake May? Like we need your opinion on the draft prospect for the draft in April. You don't ask Bill Belichick to do that the week of a big game. We've got to figure out a way to ask less of Steve Sarkeesian on the weeks of big games. And if it's the busiest time in college football, then we really need to figure out the process. We need to be the best at the process. Because if everybody's going through this, it seems like to me that the people that figure out the best way to handle this are going to be the ones that succeed. And because this is guinea pig time, like it's hard to know. What Texas did last year was the first time there was a playoff. This is the first time Sark had to deal with a 12-team playoff. Texas playing 3 games in 3 weeks, the SEC championship game, plus the portal, plus it was just a lot. And I want to stress, now that I think back on it, they spent a week, the entire week, making sure guys didn't enter the portal. And that was that was like a whole week. And if you'll remember, like there was a lot of celebration. They really only lost one guy that they lost Amari Niblack, and they would have liked to have kept Amari Niblack. But all things considered, they felt like it was a big win that of dozens of players that they met with to get NIL situations sorted out with, they lost one guy. But goddamn, like that was Sark Sark mentioned that as like a throwaway line, but it was like, oh yeah, that happened too. It's like December and January are just crazy. And yeah, I know we're kind of beating the dead horse at this point on a Monday, but like there's nothing that's ever going to make me the rest of the offseason not wonder when we get to December and January, is this thing going to repeat itself again? How nuts will it be? And I don't think there are really any nothing that was said today gave indications that there will be any changes from the process that was used this past year. And again, I just have concerns that that's sustainable over 2025 and 2026 and 2027 and 2028. There's not a Texas fan alive that doesn't want Steve Sarkeesian to be the head football coach at Texas in 2028. That's 4 seasons away. Remember when Obama went into the White House and he looked young? Then remember when he left? And it was like, Jesus Christ, president years are like dog years. They age you 8 at a time. And I just wonder if like that's where we're headed in college football, and you don't want to learn lessons the hard way. You don't want to be making your next head football coach hire as a response to a burnout that you didn't pay attention to years in advance. And then you end up saying things like, well, one of the things we can't ever let happen again is this. I'm just the advocate for be super proactive and on the front foot to make sure that doesn't happen. You have to protect against these incredibly like workaholic men sometimes. And I know that, man. Like I know that because I'm talking about Sark, and I could just as easily be talking about myself. Go look at Orange Bloods this weekend and ask yourself, who did the most writing? I mean, it was me. Like, and I didn't have to. Did I really have to write 2 women's instant analysis articles on SEC semifinal and championship games? Probably not. Somebody could have done that. But I can get it done fast. I've done it before. What difference does it make if I'm already writing 2 other huge works? It didn't. Because I tell myself that it's okay, that I'm the guy, that I'll get it done. And I did. But like, if I'm being honest, I can't do that 4 weeks in a row. I'm already telling myself inside my head, God, I need a vacation. I need a week off. I am exhausted from I've kind of had my own Steve Sarkeesian December, January window in the first 2-3 months of this year. I'll burn out if I don't do the exact same thing that I'm warning the school and Steve Sarkeesian about. So on one level, I think there's a sense that someone will watch this show and say, Ketch, you're nitpicking, and like, just stop. But in a way, I can feel it in my bones. It's like, no, this hits closer to home than I realized it would. And like, I'm talking about Sark, but I'm also talking about myself, because I came out of this weekend exhausted. And what do I do on Mondays? Monday overreaction show. Then we got the noon show. And then that's just Monday. That doesn't include anything else that I do. That doesn't include working the message boards. That doesn't include answering email or DMs or, it's a lot. And I'm going to be in the same position Steve Sarkeesian is going to be in 4 years if I don't do the exact same thing that I'm telling Sark and the school that they need to at least be mindful of. That's it.
Wow, some Catch self-therapy today on the show. House divided on a Monday. Over 700 of you in there. Here's some good self-therapy for you. Get the specs. Get all stocked up. Here's Lisa. Then we'll talk more Sark.
As a Texas family-owned business, we know you don't mess with Texas. And you won't find more ways to raise a glass of Texas-made cheer than right here. So whatever you're planning, we're ready to get you ready. Because
Jeff, how do you feel like your relationship with your mother affects your work? Oh, no, I'm sorry. We won't do that. All right.
If you know what? In the last week, she's been the least of my problems.
There you go. A couple other things.
There are other weeks.
There are other weeks. We'll have that show. We'll have that show at some point. Couple quick notes that jumped out to me. If you're a Longhorn fan, Steve Sarkeesian kind of gave you a little clue today when he was asked about NFL interest. And did he field any NFL interest, and why would he not go through the process? And he said, I came here to win championships. So in his mind, he hasn't done what he came here to do. Now, if you're a fan, you're thinking, well, does that mean if you get us a championship, you're going to think about leaving? Just hold that question. But that answer I thought was a bit interesting. And the other thing I think we need to bring up, Catch, today is injuries. I wanted to get your thoughts on the names that got thrown out, and if anything surprised you, because I heard Derek Williams' name as being out for the spring. That didn't shock me. Baxter out for the spring. That didn't shock me. Vosick out for the spring. I'll be honest, I didn't know about that one specifically. But when he said DeAndre Moore was out for the spring, that kind of surprised me a little bit. For you, did you see that injury the same way, where you figured Moore is not going to be able to go in spring?
I did not.
Okay.
And what I came away thinking was, why in the hell did Ryan Niblett move over to the star position on defense?
Yes.
Because it sounds like a fucking runway to the first team offense in the slot going in. Because like everybody else are freshmen.
Right. Can we get you out there with a starting rep or two, at least for now?
So, I mean, that made me curse, Chad.
Yeah, that's a little that was weird. I think a lot of people that jarred people to hear.
I don't know that it jarred me, but it made me I was like, huh. Because I originally, my first thought was, well, that's a huge opportunity for somebody to leave an impression.
Right.
And it's like, well, it'll be interesting to see how they align. You know what I mean? I feel like every year they'll go to the spring and we'll think we have an idea of where receivers are going to work out. Isaiah Bond had spent a lot of time working at the slot last year at Alabama, or in 2023 at Alabama. And then I think there was a lot of thought that, oh man, he might just take DeAndre Moore's job, because you're going to want to get Jonte Cook and Matthew Golden on the field at the same time. And in the end, that's not what happened. In the end, they get kind of a little bit more they do more switching with the outside receivers than with the outside receivers in the slot. So I'm curious to see, with DeAndre Moore out, who do they work into that position? And that Ryan Niblett, if you told him a year ago, well, look, man, you're not going to be out DeAndre Moore, but FYI, next spring, he's not going to be there at all. And like, you're going to have a real chance to like put a marker down. I would have thought that Ryan Niblett would have been like, okay, bet. I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to win the job through the end of my redshirt freshman season, but I got nobody in my way to catch passes from Arch. So, okay. I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm worried that Ryan Niblett is just not going to happen at Texas. And as the person who ranked him higher in recruiting, I think, than anybody else anywhere, that, like, you know,
yeah. How would you?
I don't want to say that, but a position move like the one that he's making, I don't know how in the hell he's supposed to get on the field over Jelani McDonald. And I thought that was interesting that Sark talked about the move of Jelani McDonald to nickel and was like, you know, he's actually a hell of a safety. And it was like, you know, Sark, we know, like that we agree with you on that. I'm still more jarred, I think, by the McDonald move to nickel, because I don't think him and Gilbo and Jade Barron are the same things. Like,
right.
Gilbo is moving to outside this year because they think he's got Jade Barron in him, really. But if he depart when he's gone after this season, Jelani McDonald is never moving from star to outside starting corner. So they're different athletic profiles and player profiles, and I'm interested to see how that works. And obviously, we won't really see it until we get to the season. But it just seems like Ryan Niblett is going to have a harder time getting reps at the star than he would at receiver. So I don't know. Maybe and people, it's possible. It's possible the coaches kind of are thinking they need that got a portal. And the best way to maybe facilitate that is to A, ask for a position move, and then B, put him at a position that where by the end of the spring he realizes, well, shit, man, if I'm going to play, I might have to do it somewhere else. And it makes as much sense as anything with regards to like why he would not be playing the slot with playing time at the slot wide open in the spring.
Cat Sark said he was encouraged by Christian Clark's progress. Does that do anything for you? I'm obviously glad to hear it, but how big a moment is that for you in term? I mean, because he's coming back from
a torn Achilles.
Right. He's coming back from not only a serious injury, but one of those wacky injuries that you just don't know. Is that a little bit of good news maybe in March?
Yeah.
Gotta be, right?
Well, he didn't list Christian Clark with the players that are out for the entire spring period.
Correct. Yeah, I should have clarified there. He said he was encouraged. Right. He didn't say he was out. He said he was encouraged, and they'll have to see how he progresses. I would have assumed he was out.
Agreed. I think it's a great sign that like he's on his way back to maybe a complete and like strong recovery. But that injury is such that like he has found money in 2025. That kid plays a meaningful snap, not caused by injuries all season long. Hell, that guy plays a meaningful snap all season long. And the reason why is because everybody around him, like, is in the MASH unit. Even that would be that's a great development. I mentally do not have him in my 2025 head from a planning standpoint. But it would be a great sign for 2026 if he's able to do anything this spring. And then like by the time we get to the summer and then, this is truly, he's repeating a freshman season. And the important thing is that they don't rush and take any chances. So like, I wouldn't make too much out of it, but yeah, there's nothing not cool or good about an update where the coach says he might be doing better coming back from that than we thought he would. When it's an injury like that, that's encouraging.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, Catch, I'll get some more thoughts from you, see if there's anything else you want to hit on Sark. Real quick, though, I think you can help at least one of our chatters today because Tom G had a question. But first, let's give Hijack Poker their love. You've heard about him. You've seen a little bit of it on the show. Catch plays. He told you a little story earlier about a hand that maybe didn't go his way. Hijackpoker.com. You can put the app on any device you want. Remember, you can deposit, you can cash out at any of those 6 locations. Also, multiple ways for you to get the deposits done. So go check that out. Catch Tom G, I believe it was earlier, jumped in the chat and asked, how do you mute the sounds on hijackpoker.com? And I thought, well, I know who to tell him because you just got through that process, and I think you can help Tom.
Tom, here's what you have to do, okay? Go up to because you know what? I'm not going to tell the story, but it is a funny story. Yeah. It would only be funny like 5 people, but it's funny.
Yeah.
Go up to your Hijack Poker tab, right? Go up to the top of the tab, right click. When you right click, it's going to give you a bunch of options. You're going to see reload. You're going to see duplicate. You're going to see pin. And you are going to see mute site.
Boom. Mute site. Yeah, multi-day process where Catch kept telling me he couldn't figure it out. And then finally, there was a someone with a little bit more technical knowledge that was able to say, hey, do that, right click and hit mute. And then it was, oh.
No, but the day before, or even hours earlier than that, the owner of Texas Card House and Hijack Poker was like, I think we might have to get that into the next update, of the app. And I was like, guess there's nothing we can do. And then one of his nerds was like, no.
Yeah, here it is. We got it.
And Tom, it's glorious because I've never had to unmute it. Once you mute it once, it's muted forever until you unmute it.
Yeah, there's certain functions, Catch, in life. It's those moments. Like, you remember the moment you first discovered the last channel button on a remote control? Like the first moment, you're like, oh, wait, I can go back to, yeah, you can. It's just one button. It's fantastic.
Well, that was the moment that the remote just stayed in your hand forevermore after that.
Exactly. Now it does. Yeah, then it didn't leave.
Like, click, 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 click. You've trained yourself to be able to look at a screen in like a second and a half and go right back to the thing that you were looking at before.
Yeah, Tom G, we hope that helps you out. Catch, anything else?
Tom, you're welcome.
Anything else from the Sark presser that jumped out to you? I think we covered the main stuff.
No, we did. And I'm glad you went to the injuries. I got to be honest, man, Anwar, thank you for asking that question.
Oh, it was fascinating. And also thank you to Sark for answering it that way.
Well, and I thought the key behind the way Anwar asked it was critical because he didn't ask it in a judgmental way.
Right.
He just asked, Sark, can you walk us through what one of your days look like?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you said, Catch, it exhausted us to hear it, and that's the way it is in life, right? I mean, whether it's your boss, it might be your spouse. There's somebody in your life that if they explained their whole day to you, by the end of it, you might be a little exhausted and go, oh, I didn't realize they were dealing with all that, And it was eye-opening because Sark was willing to be that honest. That's one thing I've liked about him so far. I always say he needs to be effectively boring, and I think he does a pretty good job of that most of the time. But there's also some good moments of honesty where he lets you inside of what it's like to be that dude. And I thought it was a good moment.
And just for the record, Anwar's second question. This is how Anwar asked me the question, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You want me to ask about the December, January? Because I had asked him earlier. I was like, hey, man, if you get a chance, can you ask him this? Like, it was a question that I wanted to have asked. And honestly, again, when Brian Davis asked it, I thought, okay, well, cool. Like, it got asked. Somebody in the room's head. But when he asked, and I told Anwar, and then the second part of that was, or positions he loves and positions that need work. That's a good question too. And I think whatever the answer to Coach, can you go through which positions on the team right now you love and which ones you think need the most work in the spring? That'd have been a fascinating answer. We would have talked about that answer a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad that Anwar asked the December, because I gave him an out. I really was. I wrote your call. He kind of answered that December, January thing without framing it that way. I do think it's the question people would like asked. And he asked it. And he asked it better than I would have asked it, because ultimately he asked it in a way that triggered Sark to really answer the question.
Yeah.
And I think if he had asked it the way Brian Davis asked the question, which was kind of accusational, not meaning to, right? But it's like, are you overworked? Are you going to burn out? Kind of a question. And I think Sark's hackles, whether he wanted them to or not, go up when a question gets framed like that. And so by asking the question in a very nebulous, open, he could have taken that question in any direction he wanted to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he did. He took it he took it and ran with it, and it was. I gotta go back and read the transcript of the answer, because literally by the time he was halfway through his answer, I was like, and I think I even commented. I was like, "Whoa!" It's like this.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
The other honest part of that catch is right now, as we're sitting here, there are only 3 other head coaches in college football history that know exactly what he went through. The other 3 guys in the semis. And then obviously there's only 2 others. The 2 of those guys know what it's like to go to the last game and get through that whole
not
process.
all those guys played in week 1 like Sark did, though.
Yeah, that's true. But in terms
Sark,
of going,
that first game in the playoffs coming out of the SEC championship game is, I think, the most problematic one.
yeah, that's true. Of those guys, right? You're right. He was the only one, I guess. Yeah,
the SEC championship game was the week of signing day.
Yeah.
Right. But and he had players that entered you know what I mean? Like, that is only that stretch from the A&M SEC championship game is only a piece of what turns out to be what he described as a nightmare, but fun December and January.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that first playoff game, Ryan Day basically got a month off, because he wasn't in the Big Ten title game.
Right. And we talked about getting that big extra bye. Remember, we discussed it. Once that whole time period went by, that portal opened and closed.
Yeah.
And those coaches that, like Sark, had to deal with the opening and closing of it while getting ready for action. Those coaches that advanced past the portal closed and they still hadn't played that game yet.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of it. But, to this discussion always about the greatest of, Nick Saban never went through that process, and Pete Carroll never went through that process. Name anybody you want. It's brand new. It's the first year of it.
I think it's fascinating that a guy like Bill Belichick is showing with an outside set of eyes. So he's coming from pro to college, and they would have outlined, this is what the job looks like. And I think it's fascinating that his response was, well, I need Michael Lombardi. And you know what? When December rolls around,
yeah,
I'm following his lead, because why else do I have him?
Yeah. And will that be the moment? It would stand to reason that it is. Is that the moment where he's going to tell us he needed Lombardi the most? Or is there another moment?
Now, North Carolina's got to get good before they encounter the set of problems that we're talking about.
Sure.
But
he's not on that yacht Steve Sarkeesian keeps talking about yet.
No, but if he made it to an ACC championship game in year 1, he would be on a boat.
Yeah.
And he would be asked the week of an ACC championship game, coach, first year in college football or second year in college football or whenever it would happen, this game is occurring. You're trying to qualify for the playoffs, and it's National Signing Day smack dab in the middle of when you're preparing for this. Like, that is so different than when you would have been in the NFL. Can you explain what that's like? And I have a feeling his answer would be, well, I've done everything I can to make it just like the NFL. When we call ourselves the 33rd NFL team, everything about the way we run our program, we think that is in line with. So when the time comes, we're in the portal and recruiting and all that stuff's happening at the same time. That's why we pay Michael Lombardi $1.5 million a year to be a problem solver. He's my answer guy. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy that makes sure that in the week of the ACC championship game, I don't walk away from that experience saying, I wished I had been able to work on third downs more.
Yeah, no, that was a weird moment. All right,
that is we're going to remember that, right, forever.
Yep,
that is
a big moment.
It was in a way, it's completely different, but it's exactly the way I felt the day that Tom Herman said, "I don't feel comfortable calling plays as a head coach."
Right.
As soon as I heard that, I thought, well, I'm going to remember he said that forever.
Yeah, because that's a different answer than we need to execute better. That's a very different answer, because he said that in this press conference too. Earlier in the press conference, he had said, when asked about the red zone, he said, man, just got to execute better. I learned that if we practiced it 7 times, maybe we need to practice it 8 times. That was his answer.
You know what he also didn't admit today? That this time last year, he was telling us that the red zone was the number one thing that they were working on in the offseason. He reminded us of that when they reported to camp, said, red zone, red zone, red zone. It's our number one offensive emphasis in the offseason.
Right.
He didn't say, well, we went into the offseason last year, we're still It was a little more like, it was almost like, well, the red zone's not as big of an issue as is being made. It was almost like a deflection of that conversation, because when he started to bring it up, I thought, oh, I wonder if he's gonna admit out loud that this is a problem that's got a 2-year carryover from.
Yeah, didn't quite feel that way. It felt a little more like the old Mac Brown. We just got to go back to work, no matter
we
what.
We will not see him this offseason, I think, make anything out of the red zone.
Right. No matter whatever happened to Mac Brown, the answer was we got to go back to work, and he would just keep saying it over and over again, and eventually, it kind of rang a little differently. So that was to do that, and then by the end of it, then give you some realism about those third down things. That was good. It was good stuff.
Let's do buy or sell.
All right, we got buy or sell coming up real quick. Before we hit that, I will remind you, if you're looking for a great meal, a great time, and a free concert, Hay City Store has them for you. We're into it already. They got 3 of them down, and that means 2 Tons of Steel is coming up on this beautiful Monday. There's the rest of this week for you. My wife contacted me this weekend, and she's kind of looking at that LC Rock show. She's a big fan of LC Rock, so we may be heading out there to end it out on those 10 days. All the shows are free. Go to HayCityStoreTX.com for more information and get on out there. It's going to be a good time. Some free concerts for you. All right, Catch, you want to go first or second for buy or sell?
You know what? I'll go first today, only because I'm prepared.
All right. I like that. I like the prep. You know why? Because you're the hardest working man in the business.
I might have been this weekend.
And you know what? But I will say, moving forward, Catch, maybe think about getting a buy or sell guy. Just maybe a thought.
That's not a terrible thought, actually. Back in the day, you know what? If I'd have had Dustin or Blake working as a producer,
right,
I would have been like, you know what? Yeah, just do mine for me.
Yeah, just do it. Chad will never notice. I promise.
Buy or sell number 1. No, you would, because you'd be like, you sure have been showing up with your questions done a lot lately.
Great.
Buy or sell, shame on the media for being the ones that killed the Texas spring game.
Buy. You big meanies, how dare you? How dare you report on this sport and talk about stuff that happens and type things that happen and make videos about things that happen to the point where these poor coaches and players have to run for the hills. How dare you? It's a buy.
I co-sign on that. How dare us? Buy or sell number 2. I misspelled the first word in the sentence, but forgive me. Okay. The Texas women don't shoot the ball well enough to win a national championship.
Man, I want this to be I want it to be a sell, but it's a buy. It is a buy. They're so much fun to watch in one way, but that way is tough to win a national title. To be a junkyard dog, phone booth, broken bottle kind of team, you can latch yourself onto it as a fan, but deep down there's going to be a game in a tournament, especially a one time and you're gone elimination tournament where that other team, guess what? They're just going to hit 6 threes. You're going to defend them, they're just going to hit them, and you may only hit a couple, and your grinded out defense, it just isn't going to be enough. So it's a buy, Catch. It's a buy. It's such a substantive way to do business, but in this world of college basketball and the way shooting is today, I don't think it's going to get you to the finish line. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see him go win the whole thing, but I'm going to buy this one.
Come on, Vic, get some shooters. because it doesn't feel like they have any. And they're really good. Like, it's not an indictment on. It's just.
Yeah, no, because the next game they play, Shea Holly may go off and hit 6 of them herself, and then we can go.
Happen that often though. Like Shea Holly has to make threes.
Oh, she does.
That was the crazy thing about the semifinal game. Madison Booker came out of nowhere and was knocking down. Like, she made more threes in the semifinal game against LSU than she had made in the previous 7 games combined. And you could add in the follow-up game to that mix as well. Right. And like, so if they got to find some shooters. It's not like, I guess they don't have any shooters, but it does feel like they're allergic to the 3-point shot. Buy or sell number 3. OU is a Dollar Tree shopper and Texas is a Neiman Marcus shopper. That won't work for the Sooners in the SEC.
I mean, that's a buy. They need to figure out more of those big time names. OU didn't go to the SEC to become bottom 4. And we pointed that out. They didn't even go there to become bottom 8. They went to the SEC to cast the shadows, not live in them. And you can't be 1 year in and have people saying, well, look where you are. A&M's better than you. Missouri's better than you. Arkansas. Wait a minute. Arkansas is better than you? Yo, OU, what's going on? It cannot continue in this realm. That analogy has to change a little bit. They got to find that store that's between the Dollar Tree and Neiman, or it's just find a couple more of those Neiman Marcus guys along the way. But catch, this is Oklahoma. They can't be small potatoes in the SEC. They got to figure it out.
They had one of their big recruiting events of the year this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there were a couple. There was like Jamison Winfield was supposed to be there. Another guy was supposed to be there. I don't think they showed. I don't think Texas had a single 2026 state top 25 guy from the state of Texas show up at a big recruiting event.
Wow.
I mean,
that's the kind of stuff that can't happen. Can't happen.
It can't. And that's not, they had 10 guys go in there, and I don't know if they're going to get any of them. The 2 guys that they were, maybe they snuck in. Maybe Jameson Winfield snuck in and just didn't post anything on any of his socials, and nobody saw him, and nobody got interviews, and maybe.
Yeah.
But then that's not usually the way guys end up going to schools, is sneaking in and out and not doing interviews. So I don't know.
Here's the easiest way for me to say it, Catch, because I watch this part of the SEC very closely. You know what A&M is in the SEC right now, and you know what Arkansas is in the SEC right now. And they're worse than both of them. There is something drastically wrong with
poorly. We're probably gonna do this show tomorrow. Their OU is Dollar Tree, man.
That's
you know how I know that? Because they're shopping at Kennesaw State for multiple players in the portal.
Yeah, that's a bad sign.
And I'm telling you right now, there ain't a dude at Kennesaw State that's playing for Georgia.
I guarantee you, there's a lot of people in the chat looking forward to that show, Catch. And they're not sad about it at all.
Buy or sell number 4. Ultimately, the aftermath of this weekend's Xavier Worthy situation is none of your damn business.
That's a buy. As long as there's just one of them, that's a buy. I mean, it is. It's none of our business. I liked your comments on it and your 10 thoughts, and I agree with you on some of those thoughts. He and that young lady have got to figure things out. They got to figure out what's going on. As of right now, it's none of our business, because the Williamson County officials said, no, it's none of our business.
So if it ain't their business, it ain't my business.
That's right. Not my business today. That is a buy, but it is one of those stories that cannot come back around. If it comes back around and the eyes start to really roll, that's when it's bad. That's when it's bad.
And I'm just going to say it, kids. I tell you what, when we're done with buy or sell, let me circle back around.
Yes, you lay it out.
I just want to say the one thing that I feel like needs to be said, and then we can just move on, because
we'll let you do that.
It is not any of our business.
Until that point, I'll just send my best to him, to the young lady, and obviously considering the fact that there is a baby on the way, let's hope things get figured out.
For real. Let's just hope everybody involved comes out better. And there's
Yep.
a lot of ways better can occur. Let's just hope some of them do. Buyer sell number 5. I did my Bob Dylan top 10 list this weekend because that didn't take up any time. And you agree that Like a Rolling Stone has to be the number 1 song on any Bob Dylan list.
It's real easy, isn't it, Catch? Just studying up on Dylan. All the songs are short and real simple. I mean, it's just like listening to, it's like listening to old Beatles or like Motorhead or AC/DC real quick. Just real quick. I think, when I got there and saw that that's what you put number 1, I just kind of,
it's Like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, it had a good landing. It had a good landing for me. It's always been one of my favorites. So I'm going to buy it because I think it's a great representation of why he's important. And it is lyrical substance, but also give me a rock song. And those two things come together brilliantly in Like a Rolling Stone. So that's why I would go there. He's got versions on both sides. He's got stuff that's a little too rock from there. He's got stuff that's a little too folk from there. But Like a Rolling Stone hits it perfectly. So I'll buy. I think you got it right.
By the way, all of you that were of the opinion that Rainy Day Woman could hit the streets, y'all can kiss my ass.
I love it. I did love that you had Rainy Day Women in your top 10. That's a great statement to make as a Dylan fan. Like, no. We're throwing that in. Boom.
It had to be on the list for me. At the end of the day, anytime I listen to Dylan, that song is just like a good,
hey,
it's a banger. What can I say?
You know what that tells us? Here's what it tells us. That's what it tells us. That's it. That's what it tells us.
It doesn't mean it's the best song he wrote lyrically.
No.
Or the best song he ever sang.
No.
But it's a banger. Every time I hear that song, I have a good time. So
Fair enough.
Sometimes even Bob has to let himself have a good time is all I'm saying.
All right, Catch. We're going to start buy or sell with some truthin' on the basketball side. Let's just get it out there. Buy or sell number 1, Texas men won't make the dance and will hire a new coach.
Buy. I don't know how you, among the last 4 out, going into a must-win game and then lose that game. I don't know. The recipe, I guess, at this point would have to be at least winning 2 games.
Yeah.
At least 2 in the SEC tournament. So, yeah, it's a buy. And
lost that game at home, too.
Oh, it was a bad loss.
Right, you can't.
I don't know. I feel awful for Trey Johnson that in his last career home game and then ultimately – the most important game he'll ever play in. The stakes in that game were big.
Yeah.
Because now they won't play in games with bigger stakes. And to go 0-14 it kind of reminded me of how bad Kevin Durant's shooting performance was against USC in that first round NCAA tournament game. But then I was like, but he did make a shot. And they did make it to the tournament that year. And they did lose to a team in USC that had like Taj Gibson on it, which reminds me that I interviewed Taj Gibson on Yahoo Sports Radio once. And I was like, Taj, I brought up that Texas game, and I don't even remember what I asked, but I remember Taj Gibson being offended at the framing of the question.
Okay.
I just kind of brought up, like, I don't know. I don't remember how I asked it, but I remember asking him about it. And I remember the answer not being, I'm glad you asked that question, Jeff.
Yeah.
Turns out he didn't really want to go down the memory hole of college basketball back then. Go ahead. Continue.
All right. Let's just update it. Let's just get your updated opinion here. Buy or sell number 2. Texas should never accept an NIT bid ever again.
Sell, but not this year.
Okay. That's fair. Buy or sell number 3. Your NBA MVP is SGA.
Buy. He's the best player on the best team, and his games this year against teams in the NBA top 10 are crazy. He's averaging more than 35 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds this year against the best 10 teams in the league. Jokic is incredible. And if he had a 30-20-20 game this weekend, which is the first time in NBA history that has ever happened.
Ever.
And Durant that same night, Chad, was like 29, 8, and 7, which is an incredible game.
Yeah, he just dwarfed it.
And he went 30, 20, 20.
When you think of all the Oscar Robertson, Russ and LeBron and all
Wilt
the dudes,
never even had one, and Wilt had all kinds of crazy ass games.
Wilt's a great example. When you think of all that and you go 30, 20, 20, holy crap! It's just it is what
Magic never had a 30, 20, 20 game.
Never, but he got 20 assists.
LeBron never had a 30, 20, 20 game.
20-something assists in a game is silly. I don't care who you are.
I'm a buy, but it also does feel a little bit like the Joel Embiid year, where I can absolutely justify the Embiid MVP, but the constant is, God, are we really not going to vote for Jokic because, God, he's been good. Great.
Yeah.
Like, good's just not good enough. So I will vote for SGA because it feels like this is his year. But, man, in 20 years, we may look back and just go, well, why did he not win like 5 consecutive MVPs?
Yeah. All right, Catch, buy or sell number 4, rounding out all the basketball stuff. South Carolina women, you're picking them to win it all.
Can I take the field?
Sure. You could just sell this and take the field.
I sell and take the field.
Okay.
Because I do think the thing that's different about this South Carolina team versus, I think, the championship teams that they've had, it's beatable. We've seen them get beat. We've seen a Texas team beat them. We've seen UConn beat them. I look out west, and you know that UCLA and USC are a handful. UConn's going to be a really tough out. Like, there's just – if LSU gets back, they're All-American. They won't be an easy out. It feels like in a lot of years there are maybe 3 or 4 teams that you think can win a national championship. Yeah. I think there's maybe like 8 this year. And consequently, I'll take my chances on the math and take everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. All right, Catch, a little birthday hotter than on the way out. Buy or sell number 5. Carrie Underwood is 42 today. Prime on prime. Carrie is hotter than Faith Hill.
That's a sell. If we're talking prime on prime, I mean, Carrie Underwood, I mean, I kind of hate, he's got some, the hell, they probably both have the same ugly politics. I mean, they're white women.
Wow.
From the South.
Wow. Dang.
I don't have high expectations from Carrie. She's from Oklahoma.
Oh,
they barely allow
catching strays.
Yeah, I know. But Faith Hill's just, to me, slightly different. I hear Carrie Underwood and I think, what an amazing pair of legs. And I say Faith Hill and I think, what a Greek goddess. So it's just slightly different things.
I think you are correct there. Happy birthday to Carrie Underwood today. All right, Catch, before we get out of here, first off, we did get a super chat just real quick from Juan, $4.99. If Arch wasn't at Texas, would Quinn come back for this season?
It looked like the answer would have been yes.
Really?
But I think we always kind of knew that.
Okay.
He didn't play well this season, really. Like, he didn't have a great season. The team did, but Quinn, I mean, it looks like Quinn would say I was hurt the whole damn year. Like, it wasn't what I wanted. And
from that part of it, you're right.
I was amazed they were able to keep Arch last year. Waiting another year, given that that's never happened in the history of college football with a number 1, number 2, or number 3 overall player who was a quarterback. Nobody's ever waited 2 full seasons before they're a starter. Nobody had ever waited more than the 1.5 seasons that Vince Young waited when he signed in 2002. That's it. We all remember that, right? Chance started the season. They got to the Oklahoma game. Things went bonkers. Then Vince became the starter. That in the previous quarter century, that is the longest anyone with a profile like Arches or Vince or anybody else that had a profile like that has ever waited. They weren't going to dare tell Arch it's not your year. So I think Quinn probably got some clarity about like where he was in the pecking order.
Yep. All right, Catch, before we get out of here, do you have some Uncle Catch advice for the couples out there?
Look, I got a rule, and I'm not telling you this is the best rule, but what I would tell you is it's an easy, simple rule. I will teach it to my kids the moment there's a reason to like, okay, we should probably the moment that I have to have a birds and the bees conversation, I'm going to sneak this in at the same time. And I'm going to reiterate it over and over again. I had a buddy of mine. I'm not going to mention his name because I think there will be people that watch this show who will know who I'm talking about. But I had a friend who was serviced in the Army, and he was in Colorado Springs. And while living in Colorado Springs, he and his wife got into a domestic dispute of some variety that led my friend to running barefoot in the snow in his underwear in Colorado Springs while stationed in the Army because the cops were on the way to his house. Nobody got arrested. I've never fully gotten the details of what happened, but it was at that moment while listening to my friend tell that story, and we were like 20, 21 years old at the time, where I told him, person X, new rule, very Bill Maher style, Chad.
New rules.
New rule. Because I declared it just like that. New rule. If either of us are ever in a relationship with a woman or man, for that matter, and the police ever have to show up at our house for any reason at all because of a domestic disturbance, we have to break up. No excuses. You don't get to do that thing where you're like, but there's nuance about the police. No. It's just a basic rule, and you don't get out of jail card. Anytime the police have to show up at a domestic dispute, that man and woman have to break up. That's the rule. And part of the reason is exactly what Chad said earlier. Because it never happens a second time, you kind of deserve whatever happens to you at that point. Like the warning sign was blinking in your face, and you decided, no, we're different. That rule doesn't apply to us. I'm telling you, it's not a bad rule. It's a good one to live by. And Chad, I'll say this. I ain't ever had the cops have to come to my house, ever. Have you?
No.
I mean, it's not as difficult as I think some people make it sound to be.
But specifically, there's also another ingredient that really adds the complexity. And both of these two adults need to be considering that child. That's it. That's the most important part of this whole discussion. Think of that child. What is the best thing to do for that child?
I mean, look. You know what? Rather than say something that rhymes with samortion, I'll just not say anything at all.
That was your phone, basically. That was your phone letting you know that you should not say the next thing that was in your mind. I think this is where we should probably exit, I think, right?
Probably.
That's probably
I didn't say it.
No, that's that moment. We thank y'all for liking and subscribing and getting your notifications. If you didn't like on the way in, make sure you like on the way out. Football with Friends coming up at 6 p.m. Anwar and Old Fashioned tomorrow at 9, and the Modcast tomorrow at noon.
Hey, tomorrow's a day off. Well,
that's
no,
right.
It's not a day off.
But you know what? It's a day where you admitted, finally, thank you, Anwar, you admitted that you're going to take a day where you're not doing shows and you're still working and being
it's like you guys, I'm not on Tuesday because I have to do all the stuff that I was talking about earlier that I wasn't able to do on Sunday.
But hey, baby steps. It's a baby step. It's a baby. Baby step.
Sark and I need to go to therapy together.
Yes,
Work therapy.
you and Sark need to go and you need to say. Sark will say to you, Catch, find one thing that you can give to someone else, and you'll say to Sark, find one third down play that you can get back. Find one recruit that you can give to someone else. One.
No, I would say, Sark, I've had multiple therapists tell me that I have control issues, that it's a thing. And then you start talking about your life and you're like, wow, I really like, it's like it's at some point, you'll mention like, I'm the designated driver ever since I was in high school. I drove everybody. Also never drank on a boat because then you're like, control.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have to be in control all the time.
That's it.
You know what, Sark? Maybe I'm just throwing it out there.
So maybe
from one control person to another.
There it is.
Maybe we should give up a little bit, a smidge, for like our sanity and the ability to live until we're 80.
Yeah. And in that vein, tomorrow on the Modcast, you will see me, Anwar, Alex, and Jason. Kesh doesn't even jump in. Doesn't happen. It doesn't even. In fact, I won't even say his name tomorrow. Because if I said his name and maybe he was listening, it would distract him. I won't even do it. We're just going to go through the Modcast tomorrow at 12. It's going to be fantastic. Anwar was live at the press conference today, so I'm sure we're going to get a lot of extra good stuff from him tomorrow.
Well, he didn't do a show today because of what turned out to be human error.
Exactly. That's a whole other story. Whole other story. Trust me, Anwar's got a lot to get off his chest.
I wonder, I don't even know because Anwar told me that he went for a walk. Like I told him, my exact quote was, it was like 9:23. And I was like, Anwar, I'm calling it. Time of death on the Monday Overreaction show today is 9:23 a.m.
Yeah. Tomorrow.
And his response was, I'm going for a walk.
Tomorrow.
And I realized like that was his way of saying, fuck all of you.
Right. Tomorrow, myself and Jason and Alex may be there, but tomorrow just might be the Anwar cast where we let him get a lot off of his chest. That may be tomorrow.
Yeah. It was
that will happen.
Yeah. So anyway, let's wrap up.
Yeah, we're doing it. Y'all, thank you for your support. Thanks for jumping in that Specs chat, and we will talk to you tomorrow for the Modcast. Check out Orange Bloods. Remember this great new QR code that's been there for you every second of the show today. It's the easiest way for you to get onto orangebloods.com. So click in there. You know you've been thinking about it. Jump on in. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Y'all take care on this Monday. It's Orange Bloods Live.